Hey, I need you to stop scrolling because one of the most important wildlife refuges is about to be traded away.
And it's not a protest. This is about impeding the operation of law enforcement. What is the purpose of this? Other than to stop ICE from doing their job. It is to physically impede them from doing their job. It is to physically show up, intimidate, harass, make ICE feel vulnerable and unsafe. It is meant to alert the people they are trying to arrest so that they can flee. And if all of that fails, to physically get in the middle of law enforcement and the people they're trying to arrest, to physically block them, blowing whistles, using their vehicles, jumping in front of them. That is what is going on here. Now, you also have a guy that showed up to this with a gun. Okay? So, technically, you can show up to a protest if you are legally carrying a concealed weapon. But again, this is not a protest. You are showing up to impede federal law enforcement with a loaded gun, concealed. Not only that, you are standing in the middle of the street and you're getting in the middle of an altercation. If you watch the video closely, Border Patrol is apprehending two agitators who, again, are there to impede law enforcement. We don't know exactly what led up to that moment, but they're blowing whistles. They're in the street. They're chasing ICE through the streets. Border Patrol is apprehending somebody that they're trying to arrest. You stand in the middle of the street with your loaded gun. You run up on Border Patrol trying to arrest somebody and get in the middle of that. At that point in time, you forfeit your life. Okay? Would it be ideal if he were detained and arrested? Certainly. If they knew his intentions, but they don't. They don't know your intentions. What they see is that they are surrounded. They are being chased through the streets. They are being harassed. A masked man with a loaded gun is running up to them at close range and getting physical. What conclusion can they draw in a split second? What really do you expect them to do? It's not a courtroom. You cannot adjudicate a person's innocence or guilt, their intentions, in a split second like that. Is it tragic in a sense? Certainly. And is it accidental? Is it ideal? I don't think it's ideal. It looks to me like an accident.
I mean, to be honest, I think Nick Fuentes did a pretty good job analyzing this because I kind of agree with him because it just looked like an accident and maybe it was an accident. But again, I'm not trying to draw any conclusions myself or something because I just tried to explain how dangerous that can be, especially so shortly after what actually happened. But we should not forget what the ICE agent was doing. He was allowed to do this. He was allowed to arrest other people. But as well, Alex Pretti was also allowed to wear a gun. So they were both not wrong. They were both right. What they were doing, it was like, okay, they were legalized to do this. The ICE agent was allowed, or he could arrest people, and Alex Pretti was allowed to wear a gun. So this is what makes it such a dilemma, and this is what makes it such a hard time. Of course, what happened after that, after the arrest, like you could decide this for yourself if you agree with this or not. But yeah, you should also not forget, I'm not trying to defend the ICE agent or something, but if you are working for ICE, especially in Minneapolis nowadays, you're getting harassed 24/7. So you are like a different kind of agent than just like a normal police officer. You should not forget this. So yeah, maybe they feel treated like a little bit faster than just a normal agent. But again, I'm not trying to defend them or something. But what happened over there, we've all seen the footage. It's horrible. An American died. It's so bad. Like I wish this would never happen. I wish this would never happen again. But what is happening over there now, we barely know because after Renee Good, we also thought the same. But now this happened again. So yeah, what happened over there, it's such a dilemma. They were both not wrong. They were both not right. But yeah. It's hard to draw any conclusion. And I think it's very dangerous to do this, so you should watch out with this. But yeah, let's go because Nick has he will explain more about this whole case. But it's just so sad. Every day an American dies. It's just very sad, to be honest.
But accidents happen in this kind of situation. Nobody forced you to impede law enforcement. Nobody forced you to get in the middle of law enforcement apprehending a person. And nobody forced you to bring a loaded gun when you did it. And by the way, everybody understands this. Think about it. If you see a traffic stop on the side of the road and a cop is getting out of his car and walking up to the window of a person that they've pulled over, if you drive up to them with a loaded gun in the passenger seat and say, hey, stop this, what do you think is going to happen? Is that normal? Is that a protest? Is that First Amendment protected? Is that a good idea? If you see a traffic stop, if you see a regular local police officer chasing a suspect and you run up on them and get in the middle with a loaded gun in the back of your pants, what do you think is going to happen? If you get your face blown off, are you going to say, well, I wasn't going to shoot him? Okay, well, they don't know that. You'd be better off standing in the picket line. You'd be better off standing on the sidewalk with a sign. And people are just simply lying about what is happening in Minneapolis, what has been happening in every major city. Because, by the way, it's not an isolated incident. You have ICE officers and ICE facilities across the country that are being shot at by snipers, that are being bombed by radicals, literally firebombed. They have tried to breach ICE detention facilities. They actively in Chicago use vehicles to ram ICE cars, to box them in, also with loaded guns, in some cases rifles. And you have a situation in Minneapolis where these agitators are out of control. We have seen video, firsthand video in Minneapolis, also in other cities, of law enforcement who are not ICE being harassed by agitators. I saw one video of cops. They're with a child protection unit. They're arresting child rapists, and they're being harassed by agitators who think they're ICE. Journalists being followed through the streets for hours by agitators, getting out of their car, hands up, saying, we're not ICE. The agitators demand to see ID. They say, get out of the city. Let's not be ignorant. They're out there in Minneapolis breaking into hotels, vandalizing them, going where ICE is sleeping and eating and trying to attack them. The situation in Minneapolis is not that protesters are being murdered and gunned down by the Gestapo. No. This has become the locus. This has become a rallying point of left-wing agitators. These are socialists, communists, progressives, radical leftists who are ideologically motivated to stop mass deportations. They are there to protect criminals. They are there to protect illegal aliens. They are there to protect Somalian fraudsters. And they are there to get in the middle of law enforcement and the people they are trying to arrest. Frequently, they're armed. Frequently, they're breaking the law. Either it's vandalism, it's harassment, it's assault. And so under these circumstances, this is completely justified, 100%. And by the way, I don't care if he's a veteran. I don't care if he's a nurse. I don't care if he's a U.S. citizen. We have fucking laws in this country. Donald Trump won the election.
Yeah, you see, and it's stuff like this where it's like, yeah, Nick, you're just being stupid now. Like that. And it's like a lot of the times I can agree with Nick, but it's like, yeah, you're just being stupid now because you don't care if he's a veteran. You don't care if he's a citizen. You don't care. How about, like, we don't care that based on your age, your brain barely just formed into an adult brain. Like, stop being dumb. At the end of the day, like, we do have laws in this country. And you know what? It's not illegal to be at a protest with a holstered gun, Nick. The gun is holstered. So that's different. No, there's nobody running up to an ICE agent with a gun pointed right at the ICE agent. The guy wouldn't even get within 5 feet if he was doing that. That's not what's happening. If you go back and you watch these videos, I think this is very poor training by ICE. I do. I think they're trigger happy. I think they need better training, right? They clearly, they get very stressed out just by being in the street, and whistles and horns and people yelling distracts them to where they feel like they got to kill somebody. But yet we watch the National Guard and the military go into different states and cities per the president's order, and people weren't getting shot 10 times in the middle of the street with the National Guard walking around. You know why? Because the militaries, they don't get trigger happy just based off of people yelling and blaring horns in the street. At the end of the day, it's like I don't think ICE agents' jobs should be impeded, but they still need better training. They don't need to be that. They don't need to be that overly stimulated so fast.
Won the Electoral College, he won the popular mandate on a platform of mass deportations. We have a federal government. The Constitution grants it powers. Trump is the chief executive in the country. He is empowered by the Constitution to deport aliens that have no legal standing to be here. That is his jurisdiction. It is lawful. It is under the jurisdiction of the federal government. These are his powers, reserved by the Constitution for the executive branch, and there is a democratic popular mandate to do it. So what right do far-left agitators have to veto this? 70 million Americans voted for this. You have 312 electoral college votes voted for this. That's our Constitution. That's our Immigration and Nationality Act, or Naturalization Act. That's the INA.
And I'm trying not to cry. I'm just like, I hate suffering. I've suffered my...
What right do a few hundred left-wing progressives have to go in there and say, no, you don't have a right to deport illegals. No, we're going to abrogate all the laws. No, Somalians can steal money. Criminal illegals can stay here. People that have no right to be here are going to be here in perpetuity.
And again, like spot on, like seriously, don't forget the majority of the American people, they voted for this. They wanted to have mass deportations. And what I'm getting so annoyed by this double standard. Why were people not complaining and protesting or marching the streets when the Obama administration was like literally putting families in cages? They were deporting more people than Donald Trump is doing now. And no one was like protesting the streets. But now when Donald Trump is doing this, like people are becoming crazy mad. They are becoming so evil. Look what they are doing. Why were these people not protesting the streets with the Obama administration, who was literally putting families in cages? I'm not making this up. You can Google this yourself if you don't believe me. And no one was talking about it. But now with Donald Trump, all these people, they're becoming so mad because this is happening.
You know, the crazy thing, Purge, like, shout out to Purge Viral, what he's saying. I do agree with the double standard. I talked about it in the last live stream that just ended, how, you know, when Obama was doing it, nobody really said anything about it, right? It almost was kind of like there was a lot more grace there. And I'm like, why is this? Because he runs the world? There's like a running joke that Obama runs the world, and it's like, I don't know. I don't know how much of that is true, but it's scary to think about it. But yeah, with some of the things that I saw just in his presidency, the first and second one, I was pretty blown away. There's lots of things that President Obama did that tend to fly under the radar. People just don't pay much attention to. And I mean, the Trump administration hasn't even come close to the amount of deportations if he's competing with the Obama administration. They're not even, I think they're barely at a quarter. If they're even at that. I don't even think they're at that.
Happening, and this should not be allowed. Meanwhile, with the Obama administration, this was no problem at all. Where were those people back then? Like, this double standard, I'm getting so annoyed by this. Or am I the only one who thinks like this? With Donald Trump, everyone is complaining, but with the Obama, it was all fine. No one made a big deal about it. Why?
And then commit crimes in furtherance of this: intimidation, harassment, assault, vandalism. You have no right. You have no right. And if these people are successful in stopping the government from enforcing the law, then who's in charge here? Who's in charge of our country? Is it the government, which is elected by the people? The government, which is created by the Constitution? Or is it a bunch of shithead fucking communists? Who's really in control of our society? These idiots banging pots and pans and bringing the drum set and bringing their stupid costumes? These idiots, these pieces of shit, they get to determine who gets to be in our country, who gets government money for welfare. It's up to them. I mean, seriously. Otherwise, the government has to crush them. The government has to absolutely destroy them. We have elections. We have representatives. We have a constitution. We have a government. We have laws. We have police. This is supposed to be a sane and orderly society. If the laws are not being respected, people need to be arrested. If they resist arrest, then they need to be neutralized. That's not fascism. That's not Nazism. That's the basis of any society. That's the basis of any order. You cannot have radical nut jobs vetoing elections and laws and the maintenance of order in a society. That is ridiculous. And by the way, I see a lot of people on Twitter. I saw Dave Smith say this and others too. They say, I'm all in favor of immigration restriction, but I don't like these heavy-handed tactics. Okay, well, how do you think we're going to do it exactly? You want to deport 1 million people per year. That's 4,000 people per day. They don't want to leave. They have it too good here. They would rather take the chance because America is so much better. They'd rather take their chances with ICE and Border Patrol and DHS because America is so much richer than go back home voluntarily. They don't want to go. How do you get 4,000 people every single day to leave the country when they don't want to leave? Well, you have to coercively remove them. You have to show up with guns, with overwhelming force, using intelligence. And with respect to law enforcement, you need to do it in such a way where law enforcement is not put in jeopardy. You have to pick these people up, throw them in a car, put them in a cage, and then take them back to where they came from. How do you do this without somebody being accidentally arrested somewhere? 4,000 per day, 365 days a year. How do you do this without one person being accidentally arrested? It can't happen. Okay, well, now you have left-wing agitators showing up in every city, in Chicago, in LA, in Minneapolis, rioting, firebombing the facilities, harassing ICE. Now you have a hostile environment. Local police will not respond to distress calls from federal law enforcement. The local government is giving sanctuary to these people. They're actively enabling and emboldening the agitators. So what now? You got to deport 4,000 people per day, plus you got to do it while you're being chased and shot at and boxed in and firebombed. And you think nobody's going to die? You think not one person is going to die. They're using vehicles as weapons. They're showing up armed. You've got TikToks with 10 million views saying we have to show up with guns and have a standoff with law enforcement. And you say, well, I'm in favor of mass deportations, but I don't think violence is acceptable to achieve it. You're not really in favor of mass deportations then.
And again, spot on. Seriously, Nick makes some very good points. I completely agree with him on this one. And I'm not trying to glaze him or something in this video, but he makes some very good points. I agree with the fact that, do you know how hard it is for our government to deport so many people? They're not even able to do this. Just look at the numbers. Obama deported already more people than the Trump-Steen administration. So that says already enough, right? And of course, if they want to deport so many people, they will make mistakes. They will do this, 100% sure. And especially now, if you have so many people who are trying to defend the people who should be deported as well, yeah, they will make mistakes, 100%. Is this sad? Yeah, this is very sad. What happened with Alex Pretti, with Renee Good, is this sad? Yeah, every day an American dies. It's very sad, and I wish we would never had these kind of days. But this is just happening now. And yeah, I'm very curious about your opinion. Do you agree with Nick on this one? Do you disagree with him? I am very curious. Please share your opinion in the comments. It's very important to say I read all comments. I even try to reply to some of your comments. So I'm very curious. As well, if you like this video, please hit the like button. If you really like these kind of videos, consider subscribing. I would really appreciate it. And then you'll make sure you don't miss anything. Last but not least, guys, I wish you all the best. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.
Shout out to Purge Viral. When I already had my doubts when what happened with Renee Good happened, I already said, you know what? This is not looking good. I'm not saying that the sanctuary cities are right or what they're doing is right. They are causing problems. But what I'm saying is that I know this doesn't look great for the midterms. And I was already doubtful when Renee Good took place, when her death took place. Let's just say now with Alex, I don't have the confidence anymore. I'm like, dude, the Republicans are going to have a hard time holding on in the midterms. Like, people are going to be very angry. And when they are this angry, they usually will vote the party out that has the control of the House. So I mean, I said it when Renee Good's murder happened. I said it. I said, dude, I don't feel that confident anymore that the Republicans will hold on to the midterms. I'm like, and if this happens again, I'm probably positive they're going to lose. And lo and behold, it happened again. So very, very unfortunate. Pray for that man's family. Pray for our government. There are people who have raised money, for Alex Pretti. Shout out to channel favorite Keith Edwards. I believe it was Keith Edwards that raised $1 million for him. So shout out to Keith Edwards. All right, guys, we're gonna jump into the next clip of the live stream. We have Democrats are vehemently pissed off. They are threatening shutdown once again. Because they are tired of funding ICE and immigration efforts. So let's take a look at how the Democrats feel.
Democratic lawmakers also facing backlash from their own party for threatening to shut down the government over the administration's deportation operations. This week, Senate Democrats will be forced to go on the record if they vote against a funding bill for the Department of Homeland Security, which does include ICE and Border Patrol. Democratic Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman telling his colleagues that would be a big mistake.
Well, for me, I think maybe your viewers remember that I was one of the Democrats that led the pushback about the government shutdown last year. And for about 45 days, they kept things shut down. And if the Democrats vote to shut it down, now our entire military won't be paid again. I can't ever support that.
Yeah, I definitely don't think something like that would be smart. Shout out to John Fetterman. He's one of the people I always say that people should watch out for, in a good way. Representative out of Pennsylvania. I mean, they're pissed, They don't want to fund Border Patrol. They don't want to fund ICE. I don't think that they should fully stop funding them. That's crazy. And it's like, come on, Democrats. That's partially why we're in this rut that we're in now, because of open borders. So we don't want to do that. But they are tired of it. They don't want to see any more people killed. They're tired of what's going on in Minnesota. So I wasn't shocked when I saw this headline. I just thought to myself, oh my goodness, they're going to threaten it with shutdown again. And we were already in the longest shutdown history. So it's like, I could just imagine how long they would be willing to go this time. So not really up for that, hoping that something changes there. Because we know the Democrats showed us last time that they could stay in shutdown for some time. All right, guys, let's go to the next clip of the live stream. Let's go to State of Texas debate closes. Okay, so that's in regards to Jasmine Crockett and James Tellerico. James is somebody who I've been telling you guys to watch probably since last year. I've been telling you guys to pay attention to James. Someone who I think James is very persuasive. He's a very smart man. He's into politics, and he also knows a decent amount of scripture. There are times where he uses it out of context, but I can give him grace for that. But yeah, someone who I've definitely told you guys to watch, and now he is front and center. So he and Jasmine Crockett, I believe, are going up against one another for a state Senate seat. Everyone's pretty upset about this because they like them both as leaders, but they have to choose just one. So let's take a look at their debate. Well, at least it's not a full debate. It's just clips of it, some of it, in closing. So I want to take a look at that.
Welcome back to State of Texas. We now rejoin Next Star Media Group's special recap showing of the Democratic U.S. Senate primary debate.
In polls, voters across Texas have voiced frustration with what they see as corruption and special interest influence in Washington. You are in Congress now, so how would you respond to voters who believe the system is rigged?
I agree. I'm running for the United States Senate because I think that it's time for us to do our best to try to unrig the system. Listen, I'm not a likely story. I didn't come from a family where everybody thought that I was going to end up in politics. And frankly, as I started this off, I said that I hate politics. At the end of the day, we need to do things like you were talking about the enrichment issue as it relates to Donald Trump. Donald Trump has enriched himself to the tune of $1.4 billion since he has been in office, in violation of the emoluments clause of the United States Constitution. That's just in this term.
All right, we're tight on time. Mr. Talarico, a 30-second follow-up question for you. You've touched on themes of moral leadership and restoring accountability and trust in government. If elected to the Senate, what specific anti-corruption measures would you prioritize, and how would they be different from what Washington has already promised but failed to deliver?
I've already outlined some of them: banning corporate PACs, banning super PACs, and banning members of Congress from trading stocks. I also think we need to ban forms of corruption that don't involve money. I think we need a national ban on gerrymandering across every state in this country. I think we need to overhaul the Supreme Court, which we talked about earlier. I think we need to pass term limits so people aren't making a career out of public service. And I think we can require, through federal statute, that every member of Congress hold at least one annual town hall in their districts so their constituents can hold them accountable. That's the kind of anti-corruption package that can restore people's faith in this system.
We want to move to closing statements. Mr. Talarico, you have 60 seconds.
Well, thank you again to the AFL-CIO, and thank you to my friend Congressman Crockett for being here. And I just want to thank you all for being committed to this cause of flipping Texas and changing the politics of our state. I got into this because of my students. I got into the classroom in the fall of 2011, right after the state legislature cut $5 billion from our schools. I had 45 kids in one classroom. There weren't enough desks for all those kids, so I had students sitting on the air conditioning unit. It's unacceptable. And that's why I ran for the state legislature. It's why I flipped a Trump district that no one thought was winnable by bringing people together to change this broken, corrupt political system. And that's exactly what we can do in this race in November. We have a moral imperative to win. And I know all of you are committed to that cause.
All right, Ms. Crockett, 60 seconds for your closing statement.
One of the things that you said just a minute ago was a lot of people feel as if the system is rigged. As someone who has seen up close and personal how badly things are working in D.C., I have been fighting on the front lines in this corrupt administration. I am willing to take the chances that frankly most are not willing to take. I unfortunately have law enforcement that has to be with me all the time because of the death threats. I'm not telling you that so that you can send me your prayers. I'm telling you that because whoever goes to the United States Senate is going to have to be ready for real war. This is how bad it is. As I was traveling to East Texas last weekend, we received a phone call of a woman whose house they were having to go to because that particular woman had stated over and over and over that she was about to come and kill me. I am here to tell you that it is life or death as we see what is happening in Minnesota and otherwise.
Reminder, the primary will be Tuesday, March 3rd. The last day to register is February 2nd. Early voting begins February 17th.
You can check out more of our coverage of all things politics on your station's website, where you can also find a link to watch the entire Democratic U.S. Senate primary debate. Thank you for joining us. I'm Josh Hinkle. We'll see you next time here on State of Texas.
You can't control.
All right, so from CNN and Face the Nation, we got two clips about Alex Pretti's murder. We're going to watch both of them, okay? No, I'm not a huge fan of CNN, just like I know most of you are not. But like I say, both sides lie to us anyway. So it's important that we watch both sides so we could collect all the information. CNN and Face the Nation, they're both going to show clips about what happened during Mr. Pretti's entanglement with ICE. and also his murder that takes place in the public square. Let's take a look.
You want to file free? Hit it.
Producer for the crime and public safety. Our teams have been reviewing video of Saturday's deadly shooting. CBS News Homeland Security correspondent Nicole Skenga has a breakdown of the events as seen from various angles of witness footage, and we want to warn you, the images are disturbing.
About 2 minutes before the shooting, Alex Pretti is seen arguing with officers. One officer pushes him back, and an individual is detained as Pretti's argument with officers continues. Pretti, holding a cell phone, was allegedly there as an observer to document what was happening. About a minute later, Pretti is seen standing in the street, filming, directing a car past him. An officer then approaches another apparent observer and pushes her. She moves to Pretti and holds him by the waist, and the officer approaches and pushes Pretti. A second woman walks over. The officer pushes her to the ground, then sprays Pretti with a chemical irritant. Pretti raises his hands to block the spray. Pretti and the first woman then move to assist the woman who is knocked down, and the officer continues to spray. Several more officers arrive and drag Pretti onto the ground. An officer in gray reaches into the struggle and comes out holding a gun that appears to match a photo of a gun released by the Department of Homeland Security. In this video, obtained by CBS News, you can clearly see the gun being removed from Pretti's waist by the officer. The first shot is fired about 1 second later. Slowed to a quarter speed, you can see and hear how quickly the shot follows the gun's removal. In another angle, you can see an agent watch as the gun is removed from Pretti's waistband before the agent pulls his own gun and fires at the kneeling Pretti. The officers move away from Pretti as at least one of them continues to fire. Pretti does not appear to be moving. Around 10 shots are fired in total by law enforcement. After approximately 45 seconds, at least one officer eventually moves in and kneels next to Pretti. Nicole Skenga, CBS News.
For more analysis, Anna Schechter joins me now. She's CBS News' senior coordinating producer for the Crime and Public Safety Unit. What are you hearing from your sources inside law enforcement, Anna, about the training, standard protocol, whether that appears to have been followed here?
Well, this is a central question. There's a lot of chatter in the law enforcement expert community, recently retired officials, current officials.
See, that's another thing I don't like. Like, that ICE agent that's pulling out his gun while he's watching the other ICE agent take the gun from Alex. Like, that's just, that scene right there in itself is crazy. Like, why is he pulling out his gun if no one else has a gun out, or if Alex doesn't have a gun? Like, this is the stuff that I'm talking about with the ICE agents.
Who are watching this play out and saying, oh my God, this is a mess. There should be training in place to de-escalate a situation. Large police departments, small police departments around the country, they train their officers. They do role play, there's classroom work to de-escalate a situation. And what our sources are telling us is they're not seeing this. And at the same time, they're saying it seemed like a chaotic situation with a lot of miscommunication. So you could understand that these agents might be afraid. Did a gun go off? Did they fear for their lives? There wasn't that communication and coordination that comes with working together in an environment for a long period of time. Remember, these are agents that are not used to working in this environment and carrying out these types of missions. And so they don't have the same level of experience within that city, within that community as local police. So it is a difference, and you're seeing that difference play out, and unfortunately, it's resulting in tragedy.
In the video, you can see an officer remove a firearm from what appears to be Pretti's waistband. That matches the description of the firearm that President later posted on Truth Social. The officer leaves the scuffle with it. It's unclear if the other officers knew what was happening and where the gun went. What are disarming protocols and chain of custody procedures? And explain what chain of custody is.
Absolutely. This is a great question. If someone, an individual, citizen, or suspect has a weapon on their person, law enforcement should remove that weapon, and that should immediately go into a sealable bag. Remember, DNA is going to be collected, fingerprints are going to be collected, all because this is a part of this wider, broader justice system in our country that we all live in, and we're playing by the same rules, or we should be. And so it might be that a prosecutor will look at this evidence and move forward with charges, and maybe not. Maybe they'll look at that evidence and decide not to. They will look at the interviews with the agents or officers if it was a local department. But the chain of custody, everything has to be meticulously done. It's immediately a crime scene and needs to be preserved as such.
Dude, it's like just watching these ICE agents, man, just watching this scenario play out. I'm like, these do not look like a bunch of trained individuals. Dude, you know, civilians are gonna. Nick is a civilian. He's never been in the military. He's never been a police officer. He's never been to war. So people who are civilians are gonna look at this and they're gonna articulate what they see. And I'm trying to tell you, people who have been to war, people who are trained with weapons, people who know how to shoot, people who are trained to be in situations that are erratic or chaotic and they can keep a cool head. They're going to look at this and be like, what in the hell is wrong with these ICE agents? I'm just letting you guys know. Like, I'm just telling you, I get what you're saying about the overstimulation with the horns and the whistles and all the bells and the trinkets. And guess what? Some of your best trained military, that stuff wouldn't even faze them. Their brain would be able to phase that stuff out so they could focus on what's going on at hand. So dude, at the end of the day, I can have grace for ICE, but they probably need to amp up their training a little bit.
And police, over centuries in this country, we've developed protocols for how to handle a crime scene. How do we handle evidence? Like a firearm. And it appears from our sources, our colleagues in D.C., Pat Milton, she's reporting that the gun was put on a car seat, not placed in a plastic bag, and so this can disrupt this justice system that I've just been talking about because it taints a process that we have developed and that people are supposed to follow those rules.
I have one more and I have to be quick with you, but in a sworn affidavit in support of an ACLU lawsuit, a physician who lives nearby asked to render aid to Pretti after he was shot, quote, especially since none of the agents were helping him. The physician, who's not named, says that they saw Pretti laying on his side and said, quote, I was confused as to why the victim was on his side because that is not standard practice when a victim has been shot. Checking for a pulse and administering CPR is standard practice. Instead of doing either of those things, the ICE agent appeared to be counting his bullet wounds. Now, obviously, we see some agents at the end of the video rush over to him, cut Pretti's shirt. We don't exactly know the sequence of events and exactly what was done here, but does that sound like, again, protocol was followed when it comes to rendering aid?
If that account is what that physician saw, no, you would not put someone, a victim, on their side. There could be spinal cord issues. You leave them on their back and immediately start CPR. However, we weren't there and we didn't see that on the video, but it just goes to this training. And I think this brings up a really important point. What my sources have told me is a lot of these agents, they have been put in an impossible position, in a terrible position, because they are not supposed to be where they are being placed. They do not have the training. This is an impossible situation for them, and that is why these bad things are happening.
Okay, we gotta shut here. Thank you.
All glasses have this tiny flaw.
And again, I don't think it's an impossible situation for everyone, but I could see it being an impossible situation for ICE agents that are trained. I don't know how long their training lasts. Some people are saying weeks at a time, and then you're just putting them in a situation to where they are hearing horns being blared and they are hearing whistles being blown, and people are saying, get out of here, I hate you, and throwing things at them and doing things. I could see where, you know, they're triggered. Maybe some of them probably have some unresolved trauma, and they're back in like a war zone or in their house where someone's beating them or something. So that's why I think we're seeing this reaction. I mean, look at the ICE agent push the lady with all his might. Like, I mean, you can literally see this guy, like, his leg is leaned forward so he can put his strength into pushing this lady. And I'm like, bro, are you cool? Like, he literally, like, I'm like, this guy needs a therapist. Like, clearly. And then all they do is just, you know, they're like trigger happy with their mace spray. They're trigger happy with their guns. And it's like that. Like, I get it. Like, people are saying, you can't do this to federal agents. I'm just saying, like, when we see police handling this, when we see the military handling it, when we see people with the actual skill set that can handle this, we just don't see that many deaths. We don't see it. 2 is too many. 2 is already too many. All right, so let's jump over to CNN and watch that. CNN is where we'll be able to see it slowed. And you see some better angles there as well. So let's take a look.
That's freeze.
Federal immigration officers fatally shot a man Saturday in Minneapolis. He was an ICU nurse who worked at a local Veteran Affairs hospital, another controversial killing by U.S. immigration agents, and the second U.S. citizen killed this month. CNN analyzed cell phone footage from multiple angles. Taken together, they appear at odds with the Department of Homeland Security's initial claims about the lead-up to officers firing on Alex Pretti. Around 9 a.m. Central, video captures 2 people approaching a federal immigration officer in front of an unidentified vehicle. The sound of whistles is blaring in the background. Alex Pretti enters the frame here. He's filming an officer interacting with protesters and waving a car through. 15 seconds later, Pretti yells. In their statement, DHS said that an individual approached officers with, quote, a 9mm semi-automatic handgun.
Yeah, so in their statement, they're trying to make him seem aggressive. And it's important that I say this because they're not trying to make him seem like an aggressive protester. They're trying to make him seem like an aggressor that has a deadly weapon. He doesn't have any weapon in this video. He literally has a cell phone out. Did you guys hear what he yelled? He said, hey, don't push them into traffic. That's what he told the ICE agent. So he has a cell phone now, and he's recording the 2 ladies that go up to the ICE agents and who are blowing their whistles. And he's just recording that. Then he's trying to flag another car through that's stuck in the middle of the street or that's stopped. And then he sees them getting shoved, and he tells the ICE agent, hey, don't push them into traffic. An individual approached U.S. Border Patrol officer.
This video seems to show officers approaching Pretti instead of the other way around. We'll see later that Pretti does appear to have had a gun in his waistband, but this video shows he didn't have a gun in his hand, only a phone. Video from this white car shows an up-close angle of a federal immigration officer pushing one protester. Then, 3 seconds later, he pushes Pretti, and then as the camera comes into focus, you see the same federal officer push a third protester with the orange backpack. Pretti raises his hand and turns away, just as the officer sprays him with a chemical irritant. You see Pretti and the other protester trying to help the person with the orange backpack. You can see here an officer pulling Pretti off of this person. 3 more officers join, and then 2 more. Pretti's on the ground under them. One officer in a tan beanie can be seen repeatedly striking Pretti's head with a metal can. You can see an officer in a gray jacket walk into the frame. There isn't a gun in his hand. Seconds later, officers shout. The officer removes the gun from Pretti's belt. The officer steps away from the scene carrying a firearm, seen here in his right hand. Then, gunfire. At least 10 shots ring out. We looked back at the scene from different angles and slowed down the footage. This officer, wearing a black beanie, can be seen drawing his firearm and pointing it in Pretti's direction. We can't see his gun when the first shot is fired, but we can see that this officer fired the second shot. In this angle, you see a second officer also had his gun drawn. And here, he's pointing his weapon at Pretti as we hear gunshots, though it isn't clear if he's the one firing.
Hello, my name is Gary Parker. I'm 54 years old.
What the f***? Did I kill her?
Pretti collapses onto the ground as the officers scatter backwards from around him. The same agent in the black beanie from earlier can be seen firing 5 final shots as Pretti lies there, motionless. Nobody approached his body for 24 seconds. When officers do return to Pretti, they appear to begin searching his body.
You see what I'm saying? Like, why are you ringing off 5 shots and the person's laying down on? This is what I'm talking. This is like, I don't have to keep saying it. I don't care who gets pissed off. This screams lack of training. Like, it's like the dude's laying on the ground. Someone already took his gun. So what could he do at that point? He's been shot at least 2 times. Why are you ringing off 5 shots to someone who's laying down on the ground with no gun? That's what I'm saying. It's almost like the dude's not even present. Like, he's shooting something that obviously he doesn't realize that he's shooting at something that's laying on the ground and that's defenseless, because he's ringing off 5 shots. He doesn't ring off 1 or 2 or 3. He rings off 5 shots, like my man is dissociated from the whole situation and he's just shooting at a target. It literally is insane. Like, there's no way that somebody would be able to justify this kind of shooting to somebody like me who's been in hostile situations. I don't think you could do it with police officers that have been in hostile situations or other military personnel. I don't think anybody's going to say that this was justified. This literally looks crazy, and like there was a scuffle and people panicked and someone died. That's exactly what it looks like.
Video shows that about a minute after Pretti collapsed, immigration officers asked for medical support. When CNN asked DHS about the officer removing the gun before the shooting, DHS repeated their earlier statement, quote, "Officers attempted to disarm the suspect, but the armed suspect violently resisted."
Joining me now is Juliet Kayyem, CNN National Security.
Even that statement right there is a lie, because when you see the ICE agent reaching in his waistband to pull his gun out, you don't ever see his hand go back there. Like, you don't ever see Alex's hand go back there to try to, like, deter the agent from trying to take his gun from him. Or, like, trying to say, like, no, don't take my gun. And maybe this is because at this point they say that they might have his hands pinned to his head at this point. But I'm thinking to myself, like, he's not even trying to stop the agent from taking his gun. But they're saying that, oh, yeah, we tried to take it and he violently resisted. If you already have his hands pinned to his head and he's not even trying to reach back there and deter you from taking the gun, how is he violently resisting? The video shows that you guys walked up to him. He never even walked up to you. So it's just, I mean, it's just crazy. It's really crazy, like some of the stuff we're seeing them just blatantly put out there that isn't true.
Analyst and former Assistant Secretary at DHS. Thank you for being with me, Juliet. And I want to play for you Greg Bavino, the Border Patrol Commander at Large, in just a moment. But first, this video, as we saw the breakdown, is there something in particular that stood out to you about how officers at the scene handled the moment?
I think we have to remember that they created it. I think every time I look at it, I am surprised how quickly it does the opposite of de-escalate. So the situation that they find themselves in, even giving them the benefit of the doubt, or they didn't know what was going on, they in fact created by their approach to Pretti this pile-on that I've seen. I can't get over every time I see it. At that stage, then it's just chaos. It is absolutely, no one seems to be in charge. They don't quite know what are they trying to do with him. Then there's this scream of the gun. The best case scenario for ICE is it was a confused shot that then led to multiple other shots. That's not right. But the problem is that then they came out immediately attacking the victim and saying everything they did was right, which we can see is not true.
Jump in here with that. Our own Dana DePash had a very striking discussion with the Border Patrol Commander, Greg Bavino, and here is the moment when she is asking him some of these questions about what was happening.
You don't know he was unarmed. I don't know he was unarmed. That's freeze-frame adjudication of a crime scene via a photo. That's why we have investigators. That's why we have an investigation that is going to answer those questions. How many shots were fired? Who fired shots? Where was the guns? Where were the guns located? All those questions are going to be answered in the investigation. We're not going to adjudicate that here on TV in one freeze frame there.
It was interesting hearing this phrase, freeze frame adjudication. What do you make of how he tried to defend this? At one point even saying that the sort of real victims were the ICE agents themselves.
Yeah. Well, it's not freeze frame, it's freeze frame. So this is the problem that the department finds itself in is the citizen journalists and citizen videos from multiple viewpoints are unquestionable at this stage. And what's interesting about what he did is, remember, just about 24 hours before, they were completely slandering Mr. Pretti about who he was and the situation that he essentially brought upon themselves. They've been trying to unwind that, recognizing that it's not a single freeze frame. It is multiple freeze frames from various perspectives that show a man who is essentially detained and not aggressive, being shot multiple times in the back, as we've now learned. The department cannot have it both ways. It cannot slander the victim and then say, well, we don't actually know. Then when asked questions, we don't actually know what happened. There's going to be this investigation.
And that's what I think the hardest part for me was just the fact that it's like they're putting it out there as if they did everything right. And once we watch the footage, it's like, dude, you guys did not do everything right. That's actually pretty obvious. Like we could actually see that some things you did were pretty crappy because of what we see. The news anchor is absolutely right. At the time when everyone's scuffling with him on the floor, why can't that just be 1 to 2 to 3 agents? Why is it like 6 or 7? Like it's chaos. It's complete madness. And that's what I'm saying. I hate to admit it, but it's like, could it have been that there was one confused shot that led to multiple confused shots? Yeah, of course. But that also still, once again, speaks to their lack of training.
The investigation, as we now know, does not involve state and locals, at least the federal investigation, and is so, I would say, worrisome that even a court has stepped in to tell the federal government you cannot tamper with evidence.
Okay, that's Juliet Kayyem, even talking about the court hearings that we're going to be hearing ahead today. Juliet, thanks so much. One more aspect of this, the National Rifle Association joining other gun rights groups in pushing for an investigation into the killing of Alex Pretti, who was a lawful gun owner. In a statement posted on X, the NRA said, quote, responsible voices should be awaiting a full investigation, not making generalizations and demonizing law of citizens. Now, this is all in response to the Trump administration's claim that Pretti posed a danger to officers simply for having a gun.
I don't know of any peaceful protester that shows up with a gun and ammunition rather than a sign.
Okay, you guys, we're there showing not Alex Pretti, but that is Kyle Rittenhouse from a few years ago during the 2020 elections, who became a kind of martyr on the right after he shot a protester. The reason why this is coming up is because after the shooting of Pretti, the federal officials did release a photo of a gun, not a gun in his hand or anything like that, but saying that this is something he had on his person. But it is not typical to see the NRA push back against the Trump administration in this way, Isaac.
No, and it's not just the NRA. You see a lot of people who care a lot about the Second Amendment and talked about Second Amendment rights over the course of the politics of the last few years, who are raising questions of why this is an issue. Minnesota is a concealed carry state. Pretti was, it seems like, within his rights to have that gun on him. There are questions of whether he should have had his ID or how that was done. But in the video that we see, it seems to most of the people who've looked at it, including our CNN analysis, that what he was holding was a cell phone as he videoed what was going on, and that he was not the one who approached, but the ICE agents were the ones who approached. We'll see what happens with the investigation, but that's how the video analysis.
And that actually matters, right? That they put out there that he was the one to approach, and he actually wasn't. When we see the video, that was actually the ICE agent. That actually makes all the difference. Even if someone were to act like it doesn't, it actually does.
People have done this, and that is itself a question that needs to be sorted out. But there is nothing in itself illegal about having the way that Pretti had that gun on his belt.
Here are the top headlines of January 1926 from a dairy.
And
Here with me now is U.S. Border Patrol Commander-at-Large Greg Bovino. Thank you for being here. Sir, you are still in Minneapolis, and I want to get to a lot of questions that we have that are unanswered. First and foremost is that Alex Pretti approached Border Patrol agents with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. I want to go back to one of the videos, and I know you can see it there, and I want to ask you about what you're seeing, because multiple angles of this incident show him holding up a cell phone and recording it, not a gun. Did he at any point pull out his weapon?
Dan, good morning, and thanks for having me. The weapon, and we do know that the suspect did bring a weapon, a loaded 9mm high-capacity handgun to a riot. We do know that. As far as what happened in that intervening moment with the video that you just showed, that's going to come to light through the investigation. That's being investigated, and those facts and those questions will be answered soon enough.
Okay, but the Homeland Security Secretary is not waiting for that investigation to take place before saying that Alex Pretti was, quote, brandishing a weapon. Let's go to video 7, because, of course, you know this far better than I. The definition of brandishing is giving or flourishing something, especially a weapon, as a threat or an anger and excitement. That's just a still photo of what Alex Pretti appears to be holding. There is nothing that we have seen that showed him, as Secretary Noem said, brandishing a weapon. Have you, sir, seen something different to support what the Secretary said?
Dan, I think what we need to take a look at here is the situation in its totality. What happened leading up to this situation? The suspect decided to inject himself into a law enforcement action. What's not being said here is the fact that Border Patrol agents and law enforcement were conducting a targeted law enforcement effort against a violent, illegal alien that was nearby, and that suspect injected himself into that law enforcement situation with a weapon. And what happened between when that situation first came about and the shooting, that's going to be investigated, and we're going to get to the facts of that.
Well, you said yesterday that this looks like a situation where the individual wanted to do maximum damage and massacre law enforcement. What evidence do you have that he wanted to massacre law enforcement? Because all the videos that we have, and I do want to, we just have the still shot up now, but I do, Control Room, want to play one of the other videos. Let's play video number 1 again. It doesn't look anything like he's trying to massacre law enforcement. In fact, he was filming, and then it looked like he was trying to help another individual there who was pushed down by law enforcement, and then they went after him.
In fact, I believe that the fantastic training that our law enforcement partners have, the fact that they're highly trained, prevented any specific shootings of law enforcement. So good job for our law enforcement in taking him down before he was able to do that. And again, Dana, let's look at why he was there in the first place. Was he simply walking by and just happened to walk into a law enforcement situation and try to direct traffic and stand in the middle of the road and then assault, delay, and obstruct law enforcement? Or was he there for a reason? Did he fall victim to that violent and heated rhetoric by a Mayor Fry, a Governor Walz? Look, Dana, they're trying to portray Border Patrol agents and ICE agents as Gestapo, Nazi, and many other words. Did this individual fall victim, as many others have?
Okay,
to that type of heated rhetoric?
I want to stay focused on this incident right now because what you were saying is that he went there to try to stop this law enforcement operation. All of the video that we have seen shows him documenting it with his cell phone, which is a lawful thing to do. And the only time he seemed to interact with law enforcement is when they went after him when he was trying to help an individual who law enforcement pushed down. So where do you have the evidence to show that he was trying to impede that law enforcement?
There's an unconscious fear in everybody that maybe I'm not enough. The deepest fear everyone has. Every
operation.
Sure, Dana, first he was there in the scene. He was in the scene actively impeding and assaulting.
See, I mean, actively impeding. It's like we don't even see him going up to ICE agents, talking to ICE agents. Like, we don't really see that. They mentioned this argument that he's having with them in the beginning, but he doesn't seem to be very aggressive. He seems to be passively standing there, talking to the agent, and all he does is have his phone out. So, I mean, they're trying to give that he's an aggressor, but this is really not giving that.
Law enforcement to the point.
But that's not illegal. He wasn't impeding it. He was filming it, which is a legal thing to do in the United States.
Dana, let's don't freeze frame and adjudicate this now. He was there for a reason. And that reason was to impede law enforcement to the point.
What evidence do you have of that?
And here's a good point, Dana, is the fact that de-escalation techniques were utilized during this action. Those de-escalation techniques, whether it was physically trying to remove them from that law enforcement scene, that active law enforcement scene in which law enforcement were going after a violent illegal alien, or the use of pepper spray, which is another de-escalation technique. Those techniques did not work. Officers always try to use the minimum amount of force necessary to either effect an arrest, which in this case was more than likely 18 U.S.C. 111, assault on a federal officer, or
Where did he assault the federal officer in any of the video that you've seen? Because it looked to us from every angle, sir, that he was approached by them when he was helping another individual who was pushed down. What evidence do you have that he was assaulting any law enforcement?
Dana, we don't need a suspect's help in an active law enforcement scene.
When you say suspect, what
we
is
didn't ask help. That's an active law enforcement scene. He knew that was an active law enforcement scene, especially when the officers approached him, and it's very evident he did not need to be where he was.
So when somebody
on his own to stay there.
So when somebody is pushed down and a person's instinct is to help that person, when somebody's pushed down by law enforcement, you're saying that you just stand back and let law enforcement do what they're doing? I mean, is that really human nature?
You know, Dana, every situation is different. What our officers are faced with here in Minneapolis are chaotic, very difficult and violent situations in which individuals, and this suspect is not the only one to bring a loaded weapon to a riot. The situations are chaotic and ever-changing. Follow directions for law enforcement. Don't inject yourself knowingly beforehand into a law enforcement situation.
With respect, it feels as though in some ways you're blaming the victim here.
The victims are the Border Patrol agents. I'm not blaming the Border Patrol agents. The victim are the Border Patrol agents. The suspect put himself in that situation. The victims are the Border Patrol agents there.
I want to go back to the gun, sir, because I think this is really critical. You can see an agent, and I just want to go to
let's see here, video 5. You could see a screenshot of an agent in a green jacket approach Pretti, and then he appeared to take a gun away. When the agent took the gun away, which seems as though it was Pretti's gun, that happened before Pretti was shot. Why was an unarmed man shot multiple times by law enforcement, by your Border Patrol agents?
Dana, you don't know he was unarmed. I don't know he was unarmed. That's freeze-frame adjudication of a crime scene via a photo. That's why we have investigators. That's why we have an investigation that is going to answer those questions. How many shots were fired? Who fired shots? Where was the guns? Where were the guns located? All those questions are going to be answered in the investigation. We're not going to adjudicate that here on TV in one freeze frame there.
Okay, it's not a freeze frame. We're showing a video of one of your agents taking the gun away, and that happened before Pretti was shot.
We don't know that agent was taking any gun away. That could have been the agent's, because we don't know that. The facts are going to come to light.
So you're disputing the video. That's what happened.
That's why we investigate.
Well, with respect, you say that's why we investigate, but you're also drawing other conclusions that sort of fly in the face of waiting for an investigation. I just want to also go back to what I was asking about with regard to what Secretary Noem said, that he was brandishing a gun. At any point, do you have any evidence that, yes, he had a gun on his person? Was he brandishing it? Was he a threat because he had a gun in his hand that put law enforcement in danger?
We heard the law enforcement officer say gun, gun, gun. So at some point, they knew there was a gun. So again, that is going to be part of that investigation as to what was happening on the ground there between those victims, the Border Patrol agent victims, and the suspect.
Both the police chief in Minneapolis, O'Hara, and Governor Walz say Pretti was legally licensed to carry a concealed weapon. So are you saying it's not okay for him to exercise his Second Amendment right, not to mention his First Amendment right to be there in the first place, but his Second Amendment right to carry a gun? And if you do, you can be shot by federal law enforcement?
No, I didn't say that, Dana. I never said that. What I'm saying is we respect that Second Amendment right, but those rights don't count when you riot and assault, delay, obstruct, and impede law enforcement officers, and most especially when you mean to do that beforehand.
How do you know that?
When you mean to do that beforehand, when you show up to an active crime scene, don't leave the crime scene and you're armed, then, you've got the decision-making process.
See, he's like, you show up to a crime scene, you don't leave the crime scene and you're armed. And I'm like, okay, well, the protest or the gathering or whatever is not a crime scene. And it's like, it's not a crime for him to be there with a gun, especially if it's holstered in his belt. I just like, dude, the rhetoric around this really is crazy.
For that individual doesn't seem to be very good. Now, back to the Second Amendment. What you're saying about the Second Amendment is peacefully protesting with firearms. Absolutely, I've done that myself, and fully support that. But not when you perpetrate violence, obstruct, delay, or obfuscate Border Patrol in the performance of their duties in an
There's no evidence that he was perpetrating violence. And there's no evidence, unless you have it, and we'd love to see it if there is, that he was intending to massacre law enforcement, other than the fact that he was there and he had a gun lawfully.
He meant to be there beforehand. Again, Dana, he came there beforehand.
How do you know that?
Reason.
How do you know that?
Because he was there.
But all he was doing was filming and documenting it, which is legal. He was carrying a gun, which is Minneapolis.
I didn't say it wasn't. And I didn't say it wasn't legal.
So then what did he do that was illegal?
Assault federal law enforcement when he does that. That's an active law enforcement crime.
Where do you see in the video that he was assaulting? Where do you see in the video that he was assaulting law enforcement? Because from everything we have seen, law enforcement was assaulting him when he was there trying to help another individual.
Dana, law enforcement doesn't assault anyone. Follow directions of law enforcement. Follow directions of law enforcement in an active crime scene. It's very evident he didn't want to do that. Very evident that the other individuals didn't want to do that. And, it's too bad the consequences had to be paid because he injected himself into that crime scene. I can't say that enough. He made the decision to go there. We didn't make the decision to talk to him. We didn't even know that individual was in the business until he came into that crime scene.
I want to go back to video number 1 because you keep saying that he injected himself into the crime scene. He was a guy on a street filming an operation. He was far away. He wasn't on the crime scene. And what I want you to see again is that law enforcement appears by the video we have to be approaching him and the person who's next to him, not the other way around. And so what I want to know is what evidence do you have that he went after law enforcement?
Sure. The fact that he was standing in the middle of the road, there was interaction between him, the bystanders, and law enforcement. And again, follow directions of law enforcement. He doesn't need to be in the middle of a crime scene. Dan, I don't think you would want to be in the middle of a crime scene, or you would want civilians in the middle of a crime scene injecting themselves into something that is none of their business at all.
Can you also just answer the question about the gun? Because, again, do you have any evidence that he was brandishing his weapon? Did he ever have his hand on the weapon?
Yeah, again, the officers on the ground, in that melee, we hear gun, gun, gun. So that gun, at some point, became visible to officers.
But could it have been because they had him on the ground and maybe his shirt came up and they saw that it was on him? That doesn't mean that it was...
That is why we have an investigation.
Fine.
That is what we are investigating. You're not going to know that now, and I'm not going to know that.
I think an investigation is great, but the Homeland Security Secretary said he was brandishing a weapon. Do you have evidence that we haven't seen that he was brandishing a weapon?
He brought a semi-automatic weapon to a riot, assaulted federal officers, and at some point they saw that weapon. So I do believe the Secretary is 100% spot on in what she said. Why would you bring a weapon and assault a federal officer if you did not have intent to harm or delay or obstruct that federal officer with a weapon?
You keep saying that he assaulted a federal officer. But again, we have not seen evidence that happened. It looked like he was on the defense. And again, he had a gun legally. It sort of feels like we're in the upside down, where we have law enforcement and conservatives who are very pro-Second Amendment saying the problem was that he had a gun.
Yeah, like that's crazy to me too. I'm like, dude, what the hell?
Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith Qudsi,
Legally.
No, the problem is
law enforcement and conservatives who are very pro-Second Amendment saying the problem was that he had a gun. Legally.
No, the problem is, as I said several times now, is he injected himself. He put himself where he did not need to be. He put himself and put law enforcement officers in jeopardy through his actions. These were his actions, not law enforcement officers' actions. We had to react to an individual that came there for a specific reason. And again, what that reason is, we're going to find more out about that in the coming days. I'll be interested to see what his reason for being there, while Border Patrol agents were arresting a violent criminal, illegal alien doing their lawful, ethical, and moral duties in Minneapolis. That's the question.
Well, but the question is also, why is an American citizen now dead for the second time who was there to document, in this case, and clearly to be there as a bystander, which is
it's not he wasn't there to clearly document anything. Don't socially engineer the topic, Dana. He was not there to document.
Appeared to be. That's fair. Appeared to
be. Obfuscated and delayed officers there.
I want to ask.
That's pretty evident to me.
I want to ask you about your agents. You said that this was a highly trained agent who had been serving on Border Patrol for 8 years. What was he trained for? Because
These are your Border Patrol agents, and they're now in the interior of the country, in American cities. Was he trained in urban policing?
Yes, all of our Border Patrol agents are trained in all for all types of environments, including urban policing. This particular Border Patrol agent had 8 years with some specific skill sets there with both firearms and less lethal munitions. Also, let's take a look at the training and the environments that Border Patrol agents operate in. We operate in places like San Diego, California, Tucson, Arizona, New Orleans. All those have Border Patrol sectors. Detroit, Michigan. We've got Border Patrol sectors in Buffalo. So this myth, and I saw this just last night on CNN, this myth that Border Patrol agents don't work in urban areas is just that. It's a myth. We're well adept at urban areas, conducting that Title 8 immigration enforcement wherever we go. It doesn't matter if it's a desert or an urban environment. We're very well adept at doing that.
Is the agent or agents, is it your understanding that more than one agent fired a weapon at Alex Pretti?
Again, that's going to be part of the investigation. I'm not going to speculate on how many shots or who shot that type of thing because I don't know.
Are the agents who were involved still on the job?
Yes. These Border Patrol agents are going to more than likely be on administrative duty, but they were Border Patrol agents.
What does that mean? So they'll be off the streets for a bit?
Not in Minneapolis, they will, but only in Minneapolis here. They'll be at a different location.
Okay. And before I let you go, I just want to button up one point that you were making about what Alex Pretti was doing there. Do you accept that it is the law that an individual has a right to film what law enforcement is doing?
I believe that all citizens of the United States have those First and Fourth Amendment rights as long as they do so peacefully and don't delay, obstruct, or assault anyone in doing that. And that's the issue here because he was not peacefully doing anything.
All right. And just for the record, and we've seen this video multiple times from multiple angles, there is no evidence that he was doing anything other than being peaceful until the altercation began. Again, I look forward to seeing the other evidence in the investigation that you have, because we do want to get to the bottom of this and do want to get all of the facts as they actually happen. Chief Favino, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you being here and answering questions.
Man, you can tell he was being pretty adamant about that. So because he inserted himself from the very beginning, that's why Chief Bavino feels like, I guess this is more his fault. Because even though he was recording only and he didn't have a gun, he's saying that, he still was inserting himself into a situation that was already volatile and chaotic and a bad situation. I still don't agree with it, but I get what he's saying.
Armed. If this was someone.
My name is Charlene Jones. I'm a fellowship-trained sports medicine physician here at Christiana Care, and I've
someone that was armed, that he was afraid could be armed and fatally shoot him.
All right, Dr. G explains, body and language analyst. He says that this is his opinions solely, so he doesn't want us to think that this is any type of medical diagnosis or analysis or analysis in any way, shape, or form. He does want us to know that, but I wanted us to take a look at this because I always like body and language experts and like their take on things. So let's take a look.
Hey everybody, Dr. G here. I'm a clinical and forensic psychologist as well as a body language expert, and today we're going to be analyzing the behavior and body language that led up to the shooting of Alex Pretti. Before we get started with this, a couple of quick things. One, I wanted to make sure you know this is not a psychological evaluation of any kind. These are just my opinions. In addition to that, I do want to remind you to like and subscribe if you want to see more content.
Just like this. All right, let's go.
What we're going to be analyzing today is all of the behavior, body language, and psychology that led up to the shooting of Alex Pretti.
Now, we're going to be looking at this from several different angles. I'm not going to be showing the literal shooting itself. I don't think that's helpful, so I'm not going to be showing anything gruesome, but you will be seeing the altercation leading up to that, and we're going to be watching it numerous times as we talk about all of the different behaviors we see, and we're going to be looking at it from different angles.
All right, let's just jump right in.
Now, the first thing I'm noticing here are the whistle sounds. They are almost impossible for the brain to ignore. They're high-pitched, they're agitating, and they can lead to sensory overload. So already, with the loudness and the volume of these whistles, communication is going to get disrupted, tensions are already going to be heightened just by that alone. So right here, you can see Alex Pretti has his arm around this woman.
And then you can see the Border Patrol agent just push this one very hard. Now, I want you to keep this in mind.
So he sees her, she's standing still, and he pushes her hard. Now, this is something I haven't seen a lot of people talk about, but this shows how much aggression is already building up in this situation. As you can see, she's not doing anything particularly confrontational at this point.
Now, if you can see, he actually walked out of his way to push her over. Watch the Border Patrol agent right here.
He spots her. As she continues to talk, he starts stepping closer, and he pushes her with all of the force he's got. Now, I want you to keep in mind, from a law enforcement perspective, what a bad idea this is. Because if they're concerned that people are armed, if this was someone that was armed, that he was afraid could be armed and fatally shoot him or something like that, this would be the dumbest thing you could do. Which would be to create a tremendous amount of space between you and a suspect, or you and someone that you think could hurt you.
Now, the person that he just pushed over was not Alex Pretti.
But the point is that this is not a safe
activity for law enforcement to do. This is not advisable for law enforcement to just push somebody over. If they need to have some sort of intervention, if they're going to arrest somebody, they need to do it in a way that keeps them safe. This is not suggesting that they are acting in the safest manner possible. See, steps out of his way, just absolutely lunges.
Yeah, see, that guy right there, he's probably one of the most problematic people. The guy who steps out of his way to lunge and push the lady so hard that she falls. I'm not really sure, like, what was his purpose in doing that, but that's why I keep saying it just speaks to lack of training.
And pushes her over. So after she's fallen over, now you can see Alex Pretti turn and starts to confront this officer. Now, the agent pulls out pepper spray or some sort of non-lethal spray. You can see he's got one hand up in a defensive posture. Alex Pretti has his head turned to the right. He's trying to avoid now. And as you can see, the officer continues to spray him in the face. So it wasn't one spray and then back up or do something in order to make the situation safer. This agent, as he continues to try to spray him in the face as much as possible, is adding to the chaos of this situation.
See, he's following him and continuing to spray him.
Alex Pretti had his arm up in a defensive posture. He reached down. I presume he's trying to help her up right here. And then the Border Patrol agent pushes Alex Pretti. So that's one push, spraying. Now a second push.
So this Border Patrol agent is clearly very agitated right here. He's being confrontational. He's going out of his way to make things disruptive. This is not somebody who's trying to de-escalate. This is someone who is actively escalating the situation very, very quickly. All right, let's go back and look at this a little bit more. So he's being sprayed right there. He's trying to get away from it.
He gets pushed. Now the woman that was pushed to the ground, she's standing up. She appears, I don't know if she's reaching for the Border Patrol agent or if she's trying to block the spray from coming at her, but you do see her arms go up. Now he's continuing to spray.
Confusing right here. It's very, very hard to see. It confused me a little bit the first time I saw it. You can see Alex Pretti right here grabbing the woman that had been pushed to the ground. Now, I don't know if it's that he can't see and he thinks this is a Border Patrol agent. I don't know if he's trying to hold on so they can't pull him off. It's unclear what he's trying to do. But it almost appears that he's holding her aggressively, but I don't really think that that's his intent at this point. This is not a matter of defending him, it just doesn't really make any sense behaviorally in the context of what we've seen. See, she's getting dragged a little bit right here. He's continuing to hold on to her. And now all of the Border Patrol agents are pulling him down. At this point, I want you to think about what specifically has he done to get himself pulled over in this situation. The Border Patrol agent that now pushed somebody, sprayed somebody else in the face, pushed him again, is now pulling him off of her, pulling him off the ground. At this point, Alex Pretti has literally not done anything else. He has not been violent, hasn't pushed anybody. We can't hear what he's saying. Maybe he's saying something that's agitating, but we're not seeing any physical behavior from him at this point that has been threatening towards police at all. Or threatening towards Border Patrol, sorry. I'm going to mute the sound right here so you can just focus on the visuals. I want you to watch this again. So at this point, as you can see, this Border Patrol agent right here is looking for a fight. He seems very angry. Talked about the whistle, talked about other elements. I don't know why he's so agitated, but he is aggressively pursuing these protesters. This is the Border Patrol agent we want to keep an eye on because this is the one that essentially instigated this issue. You can see he's wearing jeans and this is the color of his top. Just keep an eye on him. So as you can see, he's holding the pepper spray still, and it looks like he's hitting him in the face. It looks like he's swinging down and hitting Alex Pretti in the face. See, he's striking him with his pepper spray right now. Now we're going to go and look at some different people in this video, but I want you to keep in mind this is somebody who instigated this. He started it. Now Alex Pretti is down, presumably unable to reach anything, even though he seems to be struggling right now, and he's striking him in the face with a pepper spray bottle or whatever this non-lethal agent is. Now I want you to be paying attention to the audio right here. So that's where you heard gun. And then you can see that one agent going into action. You can see him drawing his gun immediately. Now I'm going to show you precisely what happened and why I think the shooting occurred. You're going to have to watch very closely. We're going to watch this over and over again. But I want you to pay very close attention. First thing I want you to pay attention to is the man in the gray jacket right here that just walked in the frame. You see him reaching down. Now I believe that he's grabbing Alex Pretti's ankle right here. Now, I'm not sure if he was looking to see if he had a firearm on him right there, or if he was trying to help hold him down. Now, I want you to pay very close attention to the man in the gray jacket. You see him remove the gun from Alex Pretti's pants. Right there. Let's watch this again a couple of times. He's going for it and then pulls the gun out. Right there. The second he pulled the gun out, you heard somebody yell gun. Now, we're going to have to go back so you can understand why this happened the way it did and what led to a shooting. Now, what's stranger, though, is the behavior of the man who pulled the gun out. Now, the man in the gray jacket, he didn't say, I disarmed him. He didn't do anything to prevent that. You literally see him turn around and run the other direction. Now, I'm going to show you that footage in a second. Before we get to that, though, I want you to watch the officer in the jeans. Now, right now, he's shuffling around a little bit. The ice is probably slippery. He doesn't have much authority right here. This is not somebody who's standing confidently, who seems to have an appraisal of what's going on, who seems calm. This is someone who seems a little bit scattered right here. Now, he's leaning over. He's observing all of the chaos. Now, keep in mind, the officer in the gray jacket right now obtaining the gun. He has probably got his hand on it right at this moment. That right there is precisely when the gun left Alex Pretti's possession. Now you hear this man yell, gun, gun, gun. I do believe the man in the jeans is the one that yelled, gun, gun, gun. I'm not positive of that. I think he was, because I think that as he saw the gun getting removed by the officer in the gray jacket, he just saw a gun and started yelling, gun, 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 and drew his own. Watch this again right here. That was the first time we heard the word gun. I know it's really hard to hear this, but the word gun was just yelled. Now this officer in the jeans has his hand on his own gun, and he's getting ready to draw. But I believe he's the one that yelled gun. Now he's aiming his gun directly at Alex Pretti. Now keep in mind, Alex Pretti, this is Alex Pretti's back that's being aimed at right here. Alex Pretti's arms, I believe, are in front of him. And if you watch the man in the gray jacket, he's getting ready to turn around and go the other direction. Now watch the legs of the officer holding his gun. I'm going to go back. I want you to just pay attention to his legs. You saw him shuffling from the left to the right. You see the way he's holding his arms. This is a panic response. This is not the response of a confident officer who believes he's necessarily making the right decision. He's panicking right now, from what I can see. Now this other officer has literally pulled the gun out. And that's as soon as he starts aiming the gun is no longer present. It is no longer visible. And that's when he aims the gun at him. Now pay attention to the officer in the gray jacket right here. I want to show you the immediate response once he gets a hold of the gun. So right there, this is the point where he has the gun. The shooting has now started right here. And he is literally running away and not looking back. Now at this point, when he took the firearm, as far as I can tell, because we couldn't hear it, he didn't announce to everybody else that he had the firearm, that the man had been disarmed. And you could argue, well, maybe he thought he had a second firearm. Maybe he thought he had one somewhere else. It would be a really bad idea to turn your back on someone if you believe that they are armed and dangerous still. So this I find peculiar. His reaction to this, the fact that he decided to run from this situation without announcing that he had the gun, that the man had been disarmed, that Alex Pretti was no longer armed, I find strange. Let's watch this one last time. Now you may be wondering whether or not this officer believed it was actually a credible threat. Based on how panicked he seemed, it seems very possible that he genuinely believed it was a threat. Now, did it make sense considering the fact that Alex Pretti would not be able to reach behind his back like that in the position he was in? No, it wouldn't make sense. That would be bad judgment. But it's possible that he may even say he remembers him reaching for a gun, he remembers seeing it. Because human memory is really, really bad. That's part of the reason I always go back and show the same thing over and over again so that people can actually see what I'm talking about. You don't have to take my word for it. You can watch for yourself. So any of these officers' accounts is possibly going to be tainted by their expectations. Perceptions can be tainted by that. So hopefully, if this goes anywhere, if there is any sort of legal pursuit, they're able to use objective footage like what we have here. Because nobody is going to have a first-hand account that is going to be fully accurate. Because in heightened situations like this, perception becomes very, very distorted. All right, let's go ahead and wrap things up here. Hopefully this is helping you better understand some of the behavior, body language, and psychology that led up to this unbelievable tragedy. My goal in this video is to help you see this as objectively as possible, to look at the details that matter, to help you understand the situation. Because these situations are so emotional, it can be very...
File your taxes 100% free in the app if you didn't file with us last year. Just file with TurboTax and do it.
From Hakeem Jeffries.
All right, shout out to KTVU. They covered... how's them still Trump to fire? No. House Dems are asking President Trump to fire Kristi Noem, or, impeachment is to come. They've had it with her. They are not happy. Let's take a listen.
Of course, he is the House Minority Leader.
And he put this out on his social media today, saying Donald Trump must fire Kristi Noem immediately, or Democrats will initiate impeachment proceedings against her in the House. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. Of course, all of this coming as the Senate is getting ready to vote on the DHS funding bill. It is interesting timing, all of this coming also on the back of the shooting of Alex Pretti. We also know that just a few minutes ago that Democratic U.S. Senator Tammy Baldwin of Wisconsin, where Alex Pretti grew up and graduated high school from, also spoke out, saying that she supports impeaching Secretary Kristi Noem as well. Do we think that this is going to be able to have any legs? We, of course, know that the House is dominated by Republicans, so is the Senate side. Is this something that could even potentially start to be something that's a conversation about there on Capitol Hill?
This could start a snowball movement toward that. We do know that Kristi Noem is supposed to be testifying before Congress sometime in March. And so getting this kind of rolling ahead of time could either lead up to that or, depending on how that testimony goes, that could be, the moment that Republicans start to wonder, they only need a couple of them, especially in the House, to say, yes, let's do this. Maybe that could be the moment for this. But as of right now, it is a big shift for Democratic leaders to even get behind this. They've been very wary of wanting to do any kind of impeachment proceedings against any administration official. They do that because they have, such a long shot chance to do that. They've been really hesitant because they don't want those to fail, because that gives a messaging opportunity for Republicans. So the fact that Democratic leadership has shifted so much, that could get the ball rolling on maybe some sort of action.
And so we do know that Baldwin also said that she would not vote for the DHS funding bill before the Senate without additional accountability measures for U.S. immigration and customs enforcement. And so, Cammie, as we're sort of rounding out here, we've been speaking about it. In general, this funding bill is a small portion of the larger package, which is going to ultimately prevent a government shutdown if it is voted on by the end of the month. I would just like for folks at home to get a better understanding of really what we're facing as we get closer and closer to that deadline.
Absolutely. As you said, this is just a small portion of one bill that's in the 6-bill package. And so this really is like a big issue, obviously, and it's a big conversation talking point. But it is such a small portion of what this package is. We also still have the Labor Department, the Health and Human Services Department, several other federal agencies that still need their budget approved for the 2026 fiscal year. That will grind to a halt if this package doesn't make it through on Friday. Of course, they're still talking through conversations about what they could do. Democrats really want to pull the DHS portion out of the package, but that would require the House to come back and pass it again. House leaders are not planning on doing that as of right now. So we are looking at a very high likelihood that half of the government could shut down by the end of this week, which will affect much more than just Homeland Security operations.
We're now learning that Alex Pretti had a violent encounter with federal agents a week prior to Border Patrol agents shooting and killing him as he was on the scene of an ICE operation, simply filming it with his cell phone. Now, we all know about this because sources have spoken to CNN to let them know that federal immigration officers have in fact been collecting personal information about protesters in Minneapolis, and they are keeping that information in some sort of database. In other words, the federal government appears to believe that they are at war with the American people who are practicing their First Amendment rights. Now, I'm sure you've got a lot to say about this, Cenk. Give me your 2 cents.
Okay, yeah, number one, there's a little bit of irony here because we're getting a lot of folks, including on the left, to root for local law enforcement. And unfortunately, the federal government is blocking some of the investigations that the state cops want to do. And then I'm going to explain to you guys, after Annie gives you the facts, what is the law and what is normal and what is abnormal. And there is actually plenty of things that they're doing that isn't still in the normal category, but we'll tell you what's in the abnormal category.
All right, so let's actually begin with what we know about Pretti's previous encounter with federal agents, which again took place a week prior to him getting shot and killed by Border Patrol agents. So it is unclear how Pretti first came to the attention of federal authorities, but sources told CNN that about a week before his death, he suffered a broken rib when a group of federal officers tackled him while he was protesting their attempt to detain other individuals. So he has been obviously involved in these demonstrations in Minneapolis. And when we look into, well, what was that encounter like? Like what fueled this interaction between Pretti and the federal agents? This is what CNN reports. The earlier incident started when he stopped his car after observing ICE agents chasing what he described as a family on foot and began shouting and blowing his whistle, according to a source who asked not to be named out of fear of retribution. Pretti later told the source that 5 agents tackled him and one leaned on his back, an encounter that left him with a broken rib. The agents quickly released him at the scene. Pretti was later given medication consistent with treating a broken rib, according to records reviewed by CNN. Now, CNN, of course, reached out to DHS asking about documentation of this interaction with Pretti. They claim that no such documentation exists. I'm going to get back to the topic of the federal agents collecting personal information about protesters in just a minute, but a question you might have is, well, is it considered legal for the demonstrators to blow whistles loudly to alert others, potentially those who are undocumented, that ICE is on the scene and that they should, stay away? I did look into this. Our team looked into this, and legal experts seem to have a consensus here and agree that it is considered protected under the First Amendment. I'll give you a few examples. This is a quote from attorney Tracy Roy, and this is in the Minnesota Star Tribune. Physically intervening with ICE activity or obstructing justice is illegal. But whistles are considered a protected form of free speech. Here's another statement. If you're in a public space using whistles to signal that law enforcement officers are present and recording law enforcement activities, are expressive activities protected by the First Amendment? That's according to Gregory Magarian, seems like an Armenian lawyer, over at the Washington University in St. Louis. And then Butler County Sheriff Richard Jones, who has 30 officers credentialed to perform ICE arrests, said that he has no problem with people using whistles. Quote, they can blow their little whistles and jump up and down, Jones said. I don't care.
Yeah.
Nice.
So we're going to talk more about this a little bit later in the show, but speaking of things that are legal and not legal, there is federal supremacy. So if the federal investigators wanted, they could take over the case. If he's going to be charged at all, the shooters in this Pretti case, they could ask for it to be removed to federal courts, but they cannot block the state from investigating it. And guess what they're doing now? They're blocking the state from investigating it. So that's a huge problem right there. But to me, for the main purpose of this story, there's like 3 versions of Alex Pretti. And I want to go through them real quick, and I'll tell you which one I believe. I suppose you could say there's 4, but one was the original version put out by the federal government, which is he's a terrorist, he's an assassin, and he was going to massacre the Border Patrol agents there. So now, literally, no one believes that. Not even the most extreme right-wing person believes that. I'm going to get to them in a second, but that was an obvious, over-the-top lie by the Trump administration. And if you're on the right or you voted for Trump, note that they do outrageous lies, and now things that you know to be lies.
And I'm going to give you some insight based on a scoop in Axios about how that narrative of him being a dangerous terrorist or assassin came about. There was some fighting internally with the Trump administration, but go ahead.
Yeah. Number 2 is the right-wing version of Alex Pretti, which is, you see this, he's a provocateur, maybe Antifa, so not a terrorist, not an assassin, but a guy who's causing trouble. And to them, the broken ribs shows, aha, he deserved it. Why? Because he's constantly agitating, and how dare he protest the U.S. government? Well, first of all, that's literally the most American right there is. It's in the First Amendment. There's no question about it. And when, of course, we've been through this 100 times, when the right protests, they love it, and they think it's the most important thing, and it can't get shut down. Same thing on the left. So, but they say because his ribs were broken earlier, that makes the shooting him 10 times more justified.
What?
because they think he's an agitator. So he was at another protest. So since he was at another protest and we kicked his ass earlier and broke and the federal officers broke his ribs, then now a second protest. You're an American citizen and you want to go to two protests?
Can't have it.
How dare you? So then they shoot him and kill him. Now the third version of Pretti, I suppose you could have a fourth one that's like relatively neutral. He's a good guy, goes to a protest, or not even good, just goes to a protest. You don't have any view on him, I suppose.
To be fair, we know how dangerous those ICU nurses at the VA happen to be.
Oh yeah, watch out for the nurses. Yeah. So and then, but there's the third version is the one that I believe in, and I suspect a lot of you do, and I know that it's going to drive the right wing crazy, and good. I'm glad it does. I don't care. We're allowed to have different points of view on it. I think the guy's an absolute American hero. I think that he got killed trying to protect two women that had been pushed and pepper sprayed. I think that's the definition of masculinity, is when you go and protect women. And he never drew his weapon. He never did anything that he could have done, but he didn't. And he was there trying to protect American rights. And so that's our view of it, and the way we see it. I know that for a lot of other people are like, no, this doesn't have to do with American rights, but we really think that it does. We think that they are out there trying to protect their, the people that they live with in their neighborhood, and they're also trying to protect our First Amendment rights, and in Pretti's case, the Second Amendment right. And the fact that he went to another protest and had his ribs broken, but still came out to protect others. I think they should build a statue of him. I really do.
And on top of that, Jay, he is acutely aware of the physical violence that will be carried out against him. And so to me, that indicates that he is less likely to engage in any type of threat or, indication that he might physically harm federal agents. Knowing that any move that might be misinterpreted by those agents will be used as justification to carry out violence against him. But I do want to just quickly mention something that Axios broke today in regard